For today's math task, we are going to be looking at some things with functions. So you need to have some reminders here, make sure we're okay with. So the first thing we want to make sure we're okay with is just some basic terminology. Okay, we should know that our domain is our x values. Okay, so any of our x values. We should know that our range is our y values. Okay, one of the things that comes along with our y values, okay, is that y can be swapped out with f of x. These both stand for our range. Okay, they both stand for what you probably would associate with your y values. Okay, but y and f of x are both the same thing. So if you're ever seeing f of x, you can just associate that with being the y values. Okay, we should also recognize some things on the coordinate plane. Okay, so if we were given a coordinate plane, we should recognize some things like that this is our x and that this is our y. Okay, we should recognize that anything happening above the x-axis, okay, so anything happening sort of above this post-it note up here should be values where y is positive. So up here we have y being positive and up here we have y being positive, right? Because our number line right here for y is positive. Okay, and anything below the x, right down here is where our y is negative, our y is negative. Okay. We should be able to do the same thing with x, right? This area over here is where our x is positive. This area over here is where our x is negative. Okay, we should be able to find values on the x, right? We could have this as 1, 2, 3, 4. We should be able to find things like if x is less than 0, right? That would be all the parts of the graph where x is negative or happening over here, right? Numbers less than 0 are negative numbers, so we'd be where x is negative, which would be over here on this part of the graph. We should also be able to do some things with functions like recognizing what increasing and decreasing is. So increasing for a function on a graph is always when our line is going uphill from left to right, right? So this direction going uphill from left to right. It doesn't matter that this arrow is pointing down, right? That's showing that it extends both ways. If I move from left to right, that's increasing. Okay, we should know that if we have a flat line, right, this is constant, and we should know anything going downhill from left to right is decreasing. Okay, we can always talk about looking at an entire graph, or we can talk about looking at pieces of a graph. Okay, so if I have a graph that does something like this, I'm just totally making up a generic graph right now. Pretend that my marks are sort of perfect. Obviously they're not. Okay, but I could talk about looking at the graph in between where x is -2 and where x is +3. So if I was talking about doing that, right, if I'm looking at when x is in between, right, we would write it this way. Right, this represents x being in between -2 and +3. Then I would be looking at the graph, right, sort of in just this section. Okay, so you're going to use that information about knowing our domains and range, increasing, decreasing, and constant to answer the following question.